We're closing up the Calix users group. Last couple days, great fun, great learning with Geoff Burke. Geoff, you moderated a panel first on the big stage, and then a breakout session with Tom Cohen and Jonathan Chambers of the FCC. A lot of interest in the things they had to say. I think one of the things that came, kind of a takeaway was this whole idea of bringing fiber deeper, and that's something that will be a big, I guess, push by the FCC. Why don't you kind of give us your summary of what these panels were about?
Well, sure. Well, first of all, it's always such a pleasure to have Jonathan Chambers and Tom Cohen both involved with these regulatory discussions, because they bring such a wealth of both perspective and history to the conversation themselves. And I think the most important thing is they bring a lot of emotion to it, right? Both are very opinionated, and both really have their heart in the right place with regard to where regulatory policy should be taken. And then try and reconcile that to the realities of the business realities of the service provider and the realities of the bureaucracies within which they operate, right? One of the main ideas today was the whole idea that certainly fiber was more than just necessary. It was literally a moral obligation, right? And ultimately it came down to what role the service provider had to play in making sure that they were facilitating that obligation, even if it may be at the expense of the historic subsidies that they had received and those sorts of things. So it was just a fascinating conversation and interesting, balance of perspectives that had to be taken into account, as well as folks have their businesses oftentimes built around some of these subsidies.
Well, that's right. I mean, it's frustrating, I think, for some of the operators who've already deployed 100% fiber to the home in rural areas. They're already doing this, but those plans were built on some assumptions, right?
Absolutely. The carry out of loans over 25-year periods in some cases. So that was a sticky point. But I think at the end of the day, what's very interesting and also encouraging about this is everybody's heart's in the same place with regard to where they believe the opportunity for fiber is, and ultimately the importance not only for economic development within the communities, but ultimately even at a personal level, how it benefits their children and their children's children to invest in this. And I think that there is an opportunity, even within the bureaucracies of the FCC, to find that balance and ultimately, ensure that even if these are capital-intensive and capital-based programs, right, that there are mechanisms in place that will accommodate historic investment.
Yeah, it sounded like there are some interesting ideas of, maybe retiring debt as an alternative, right?
No, absolutely. That's one of the things that was definitely thrown out, as well as increasing the pie, right? We talked a little bit about the E-rate programs and how they actually can be leveraged in conjunction with other programs. We talked a little bit about in state programs, right, that in many cases, like the state of New York, are extraordinary in terms of their size. They can complement some of the other programs that the federal government is putting in place. And so I think there's a lot of interesting opportunity there to explore how folks who have already invested and folks who really may be new investors in overbuilding other locations might utilize the combination of economic models to benefit, the overall economic performance of their own companies.
Well, and I think we saw many of those examples, and I was very fortunate to actually see them firsthand. But film some of them, like the Adams Fiber and so forth, that are going out and figuring out ways to make fiber work in places that otherwise wouldn't.
Yeah, we definitely recognized 5 very strong fiber overbuilding companies from all around the world: Spain, Wyoming, South Carolina. We had all sorts of different examples, but in each and every case, these were folks that went out, saw the importance not only to their community, but to the viability of their business going forward, and made that leap and have found ways to make it work. And I think the real takeaway is that it can work, right? And ultimately, they've been working with Calix to find a way how.
Well, Geoff, I have one last question for you. The bow tie.
The bow tie was actually something that I really only thought of last night, and the last night of before the last day of the conference. I was interviewing Tom Cohen, and for any of you who are listening to this who know Tom, he's never seen without a bow tie on. And so since I was hosting him in 2 different panels, I thought that showing him what it looks like to actually have a purple bow tie on in Calix purple might be something that will put something in his mind for next year.
Excellent. Well, nice job, Geoff.
All right,
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Bye.